Cool. Well, let's just start off then. Let's start by getting your backstory. How did you get into business? How did you become an entrepreneur?
Sure. Well, I kind of was nudged into entrepreneurship by a close friend who you know as well, actually, too, Mike Alaskey.
Uh huh.
I think you guys met together down at Traffic and Conversion, actually, or maybe it was the leadership program that we
Yeah.
all did together down in Los Angeles. But anyways, back in, I guess I was actually thinking about that today because I'm about to turn 40 this year, which is totally blowing my mind. But it was 10 years ago that I was working in a corporate job doing sales, and I kind of just fell into that from my marketing degree to get into a sales job and was just hating it. I couldn't stand it. I was very much learning the old school way of selling, pick up the phone and cold call, and that's how you make deals, right? And
Right.
that still works. Don't get me wrong. I still believe in that. But it wasn't fulfilling me. So he came to me back in like 2004, 2005 and said, so there's this whole internet thing. You should really jump into it and start learning about websites and stuff. And it was just like totally foreign to me at the time. But I thought, what the hell? And one of the first books that he recommended to me was The 4 Hour Work Week, of course, by Tim Ferriss.
Uh-huh.
And then of course I read the E Myth as well, and I started those two books in particular just sunk in for me, where I was like, wow, what am I doing? Like, I've got a whole lifetime to live here where I am already caught in the rat race. I can already see myself going down this path of being miserable 5 years from now. So let's take a shot at this. So Mike and I launched a website development company together in 2006, I believe it was. So
Uh-huh.
maybe about a year later, I kind of, tiptoed my way into it. But that's really how I got started in it. And it's kind of just evolved from there.
Yeah. So now you're actually selling. You're selling training and training on LinkedIn and that sort of thing. So what? How did it evolve from setting up website? Were you setting up websites for clients and that sort of thing? How did it evolve from that into the information marketing sort of world?
Sure. Yeah. No, I'll give you the best version of this as I can in the shortest amount of time because
Cool.
there's a long story to it, but I'll keep it tight here for you, Matt. I wasn't doing any of the website development at the time. Mike was doing it all. I was doing the sales. We kind of combined our core expertise that way. But by default, I started to learn about WordPress and that type of thing.
Hmm.
And as a result, we ended up selling that business. I went to work for a digital agency at the time because I had some of that knowledge on WordPress. And in 2009, I actually had a contract or a client land in my lap from the company that I was working for. And it was a professional football team actually here in Canada. I'm in Vancouver, but originally from Saskatchewan, the prairies, right in the middle. So anyways, I was working with this professional football team as a consultant on social media because they were asking those questions about what is this social media thing? How is Facebook going to affect our business? We don't want to be on there because the fans are going to say bad things about us. And I had to essentially talk them off the ledge and say, your competitors are already talking about you online. So you either need to get online and get in the conversation or you're at the mercy of whatever they want to say, right? So it was a lot of convincing that it was worth their time to do that. And that's what got me really passionate about it because at the time I had this passion for sports still because I had played fairly competitively in hockey and I always wanted to stay in sports. I just didn't know how. So this was my way to kind of combine that. I saw the opportunity and I actually started looking out and reaching out to influencers in the space that were talking about sports and social media in particular.
Hmm.
And one of the people that I came across was a lady by the name of Kathleen Hessert. And she still is actually the owner of a company called Sports Media Challenge. And she's most well known as the person that helped get Shaquille O'Neal on Twitter. So her along with another gal that was in Phoenix with the Phoenix Suns at the time. But anyway, so very much a pioneer in her own way. And I remember reaching out to her and saying, "Hey, here's what we're doing with this professional football team in Canada. What do you think of this? And would you mind hopping on a webinar with me?" And this was 2009. And
Hmm.
I heard back via Twitter within like a matter of hours. And she said, "Yeah, absolutely." And it was like instant. I was like, this is changing the way that I'm going to do business for the rest of my life. So I quit that job within about 2 months. And I set out on the road with Mike again, actually. And we launched a website called Sport Fan Connect, which was just two dudes that were going out east and leveraging our connections in the professional sports ring to meet with people, interview them, talk about social media, how it was impacting the game, the fans, the corporate side, sponsorship, that type of thing. And then it just evolved into a number of different things. And like I say, Matt, this is the short story turn long, but trust me, we'll get into the good stuff about LinkedIn here in a second. So as I was doing that, one of the things that I was really sinking my teeth into was LinkedIn, because it was the professional network, right? And in 2009, it hadn't really hit that hockey stick curve yet, for a good reference, for people joining it, right? Like impactful, influential decision makers. So it was still a little early, but I still was seeing amazing results. And I actually registered a domain called linkedinfluence.com because I thought, you know what, I'm going to create a training program on this at some point. And I got busy and I just never ended up doing it. And about a year later, Lewis Howes reaches out to me. And Lewis and I knew each other through just running in the same circles in the sports social media space. Mm-hmm. And he was partnered with Sean Malarkey in their business in launching these information products. And he contacted me and said, hey man, we're looking at launching a LinkedIn training program and we want to call it Linked Influence. Would you be interested in selling the domain? Uh-huh. And I thought about it for a second and I was like, damn, these guys are going to beat me to the punch on this. But then I thought, why fight this? Like, the whole concept of everything with social media is win-win, right? And even everything in life, you want to find those win-wins. So I thought, you know what? I'm just going to give them this domain in exchange for the opportunity for us to work together. So I gave Sean and Lewis the domain, and then I worked with Lewis for almost 3 years in helping him manage his sports networker property and all of the aspects of that, which have a major components of LinkedIn involved in it, because we built a LinkedIn group called the Sports Industry Network to over 200,000 people now. It's incredible how much that group has grown, and it's an incredible marketing tool too, and we can get into that here on the call.
Oh, definitely.
But so yeah, it's that's kind of where it started from. And then, you know, the relationship just evolved between myself and Lewis, and Lewis and Sean ended up parting ways, and Sean, you know, kept Inspired Marketing going and all of the products there. And then Lewis decided he didn't want to do the training anymore, and it kind of came full circle. So then I jumped in and started doing training for Linked Influence. So I ended up creating the training for the original domain that I had in mind anyways. And from there, it's evolved to, you know, launching a business called Linked Into Leads that is our on-the-ground local business here in Vancouver, where we work with corporate clients in helping them generate leads and pushing those qualified leads to them. I've done speaking across Canada, speaking tours with major banks. I've done a lot of speaking in the sports industry still around LinkedIn, especially with sports business students, as well as amateur and student athletes and coaches. It's another niche of mine that I specialize in. It's really a passion project in working like with the Canadian Olympic team and their athletes, as well as NCAA programs. And so, like I say, it's all kind of come full circle, and I'm very fortunate to be able to do this stuff every day. And I do LinkedIn every day, man. So I talk about this stuff constantly. So
yeah, I love it. I'm looking forward to really diving into the LinkedIn stuff a lot. But I actually wanted to step back and ask you. So you and Mike, you were kind of touring around the country, just interviewing athletes. And was that like an info product, or, you know, how did that manifest itself online? Like what was the business model behind that, I guess, is the proper question.
There was no business model behind that one, Matt. It was honest to God, two dudes that were going through midlife crisis in their early 30s, just saying, you know what, let's just make this let's turn this really cool guys trip into an opportunity to create content. That was really it. And at the time, we didn't know what the hell we were going to do with it. We just thought, let's just do it, you know? And we didn't end up monetizing anything to do with Sport Fan Connect, aside from the fact that it allowed us to then to get new opportunities. So along that trip, we ended up signing a contract to work with the Grey Cup Festival in Canada here, which is our like Super Bowl up here, right? So we did a like online contesting and engagements, and we did photo contests and stuff around the Grey Cup, and made a little bit of money, but more than anything, got involved in the whole project and got VIP access to everything. And like it was such a great stepping stone. Everything's kind of built on top of the next, you know.
And it makes so much sense too, because, you know, we were actually talking before we hit record on this, and I was telling you about this podcast, And the whole reason I made this podcast initially was just to network. I literally made this podcast because of the, the network it would sort of bring my way, the connections I could make, the people I could talk to, and the doors that it could potentially open. That was like my motive behind it, not to make any money off of it, not to be like a huge business model of mine. So it sounds like you had the kind of same philosophy going into the sports world.
Yeah, absolutely. And the first time that I started monetizing what we were doing in the sports side of thing was through Sports Networker with Lewis, because we created information products and membership sites that allowed potential future sports or aspiring sports business professionals a community to come together to learn, to network, and to find jobs, because we had partners with like sports job boards, for example. We were selling, like I say, access to this community and the education components and all that kind of stuff. So it's by means of creating content with value in mind, we actually saw a business model evolve from it, which was really cool. And the podcast analogy is a perfect one because it's the exact same type of thing, right? Like, if you do it with the intention of just meeting cool people and having good conversations, it'll turn into something.
Yeah.
But you definitely do have to have a business mindset to go, okay, it's time to turn this into a business instead of a hobby.
Yeah. Eventually the funds are going to run out to just keep on doing the passion project.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So let's shift over to LinkedIn then. So, it's in the circles I run in, it's kind of rare to hear people talking about LinkedIn. It's always about Facebook or Twitter or nowadays Instagram, Snapchat. I feel like it's very rare to hear many people talk about LinkedIn, but I know Lewis has been talking about LinkedIn for, as long as I've first heard Lewis's name. And, now I'm hearing about you talking about LinkedIn. So what do you think is the big opportunity with LinkedIn that most people just aren't seeing?
Yeah, well, it's understandable because, I even fell into that same boat when I first started using social too. And actively in like 2008, 2009, I found Twitter to be way more engaging from a one-to-one standpoint, right? And you can't dispute it. Like, there's other platforms that just have benefits over the other. But where LinkedIn really started to sink in for me as an opportunity to leverage is when you started to see the masses join. So like, and I hear this a lot when I do presentations is, I always ask the question, like, why did you join LinkedIn? And in most cases, people are like, well, I just started getting invited so many times. And then eventually people that I really respected, I saw getting onto the platform and I thought I better be there too. And as soon as it hit that point, and I don't even know what year that was, it might've been 2012, 2013. You start to pay attention to it because now it's gaining critical mass, right? It's getting the right people on there. And then from there, it's just been a matter of figuring out the most strategic way to use it to build relationships and connect with people. Because that's one of the biggest things that I think people mistake with LinkedIn is they think, oh, business social media, I'm going to sell stuff there. And while we sell stuff and we actually help our clients line up meetings to then sell stuff, we never go straight for a sale on LinkedIn. LinkedIn is always the medium to just make the connection, to build awareness, to build education around what you're doing, how you're doing it, why they should trust you. And it really ties into a bigger picture of how you can market and brand yourself. It's never, we've talked about this lots. It's never one thing.
Right.
It's just, it's the one thing that I've focused my efforts on and have seen the most success with. So I thought I'm just going to run with this one because it's working well.
Yeah. So for me, when it comes to LinkedIn, it's kind of the one social media that I probably only check into, maybe once a week or so. I don't seem to get the email notifications anymore, which we're going to talk about in a couple minutes. I don't check into it as much, but every time I make a blog post or release a new podcast episode, I go on, I make a status update, tell my LinkedIn following that this just went live, and it seems like it just gets crickets. It's just nobody responds, no comments, no likes, nothing. It just kind of just disappears into LinkedIn. I don't even know how to find other people's status updates. That's how bad I am with LinkedIn. So how do you use LinkedIn? What sort of like strategy do you use to engage people and get your content in front of people? How do you how do you use it, I guess?
How do you use it?
I know it's very broad, but I know so little about LinkedIn right now that I feel like I need to start broad and then kind of squeeze it in.
Yeah, for sure. Well, you know what? Like I say, in the last year and a half, I would say more than anything, we've really started to think carefully about how you can systematically use LinkedIn instead of just the the shoot and spray method, you know, the throwing the darts at the wall. Here, I'll put a post up and holy crap, that one worked really well. And the next one is crickets, as you say, right? Because LinkedIn definitely, in fact, I saw an article the other day that said that there's no rhyme or reason as to how a LinkedIn Pulse article might get viral. There's no way to game the system, I guess, is what I'm saying, you know? So it makes it really difficult to justify it. And whereas like a year ago, we were saying, you better put content on LinkedIn Pulse because that's where people are going to find you and that's where the business people are. And you're going to get way more engagement there than you are on your blog. And now all of a sudden it's went boom, a big drop, right? And it'll come back again and something will change with it. So anyways, everybody gets all overwhelmed with what to do and where to start. So what we did was we've created a system that is basically a 3-step process of foundation building, lead targeting, and lead developments. And inside of lead developments, we've created a system that's called the LinkedIn funnel. And it's all like just, you know, in the effort of trying to put something like systematic together, because people just like resonate with visuals as opposed to, you know, talking about something. They want to see, okay, step 1, oh, I can do that. Step 2, oh, I can do that too, you know. But the first part though, let's start there. So foundation. You know, everybody wants to kind of jump straight into how can I use this like a social network where I'm sharing content, I'm getting likes, I'm getting views, I'm driving traffic back to my website. But more important is you want people to see you for what you have expertise in. So what do you do? Who do you help? How do you help them? And why should they trust you? And your LinkedIn profile is the foundation of everything to do with that. So there's some key areas on a LinkedIn profile you can optimize, like your cover photo up at the top there. That's, you know, from a landing page perspective, you can use that like almost like a sales page of addressing a fear or a challenge that people might have. And then your headline, of course, is probably the most important aspect of a LinkedIn profile. You can customize this to say how you solve these problems. You can put contact information in there even. And then your summary is where you can elaborate on that as far as like, who do you work with? These are the types of industries I work with. These are the types of people. These are the problems that I solve. If you think of it almost like a sales page, you can create a LinkedIn profile to convert like a sales page, okay? And why that's important too is the who's viewed your profile feature on LinkedIn, which is the one feature in social networks that differentiates it from everything else. Because who's viewed your profile is the, for lack of a better term, the creeper feature, right? It's you being able to see who's looking at your stuff, right? It's like a dating website for that matter, right? But most people look at it and think of it that way too, right? It's like, oh, this is creepy. This is like a dating site. I see who's looking at me. And the minute they shift their mindset into going, okay, if I strategically look at the people I want to do business with and a certain percentage of them look back at me, I have the opportunity to them, number 1, make them aware of what I do. But number 2, reach out directly to them and have some kind of an icebreaker that says, hey, I saw that you looked at my profile. Here's what I do. I just looked at what you do. I think there might be complimentary, blah, 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 whatever the call to action might be, right? So, and that who's viewed your profile feature is the most popular feature on LinkedIn for obvious reasons. And most people don't know how to use it. And it gets overlooked because we always look at the same things as other social networks, which is all about content publishing and getting likes and shares and that type of thing. And LinkedIn is not about that, because LinkedIn, I would say, is not the place that you should be focusing your content marketing efforts on over other platforms. It's still really good for it, but it's more important in building one-on-one relationships and engaging with people. So I'll maybe stop there because I know I could talk about this for about 30 straight minutes, Matt, but if you got any questions on that, I'm happy to clarify, or if you want me to just keep going.
No, I mean, that makes sense. It makes a lot of sense. It's not really as much about, you know, I was going to say social proof where you're trying to get all the likes and stuff like that. It is kind of like a dating site in the sense that you are trying to connect with, you know, a business owner is looking for somebody that's providing a service, and, you know, the people are looking to find careers on it. And, you know, you do have to put that best foot forward, just like you would on a dating site, to make that connection. So, I mean, I feel like it's a very good comparison. Now, the who's seen my profile thing, isn't that like a paid feature of LinkedIn? Because I think when I look, I could see like the last 4 or 5 people that saw it, but that's about it.
Yeah, you can see the last 5 with a free account over 90 days, which obviously, if you're very active on LinkedIn, refreshes quite active, like quite frequently, right? There is, Chrome extensions that you can use, for example, that will allow you to see up to 90 days without having to pay for a premium account. I forget what it's called, but if you just Google, who's viewed my profile Chrome extension, you'll be able to find that tool. But with a premium account, and I go into this a lot, and I know we'll talk more about my LinkedIn funnel and about this webinar that we're going to do together and stuff too. But the premium account, when you start to look at LinkedIn as a lead generation tool and take it seriously, it's an absolute must. Now there's 30-day free trials you can get with LinkedIn as well, where you can use it and see the results and then justify the cost, so you don't have to worry about wasting money. It's about $60 US, I believe, to be able to get into that premium account that you're looking for. But that one of the features of it is it allows you to see up to unlimited amounts of people that have viewed your profile over 90 days.
Okay.
So as you start getting more active, you can certainly see the benefits of having that premium account.
Okay, so I don't know if my my next sort of follow-up questions are like the next step in your process, or if so I mean, because I guess my next logical question is, once you know who's viewed your profile, what do you do with that information?
Yeah, well, it is kind of part of the process, but let me jump back and talk about how to actively. So the second step of this lead generation process that we have is all about targeting, right? So targeting has to do with 3 steps, essentially. 1, identifying your ideal target prospect. So doing the discovery, figuring out what role type are they in, where are they located, what industry, all of the things that you can use in an advanced search to find the right people on LinkedIn, okay? And then from there, it's about finding them on LinkedIn. So what groups do they belong to? What companies are they involved in? From there, you can really get narrow into the kind of people that you want to be viewing their profiles so that you can get the right people looking back, right? And then thirdly is messaging. So it's all about building your messaging scripts so that you're not having to one-off this, because if you're actively using LinkedIn, it's impossible for you to keep up with it. It really is, unless you have something scripted, unless you have a way to automate a lot of the process. And we review automation software and tools and stuff all the time inside of our 30-day sales machine program, which is a program that we have for our members that want to use LinkedIn as a lead generation tool and get support and that type of thing. And we can get into that more in detail too. But so between those 3 steps, you kind of set up that foundation to get the right people looking back at you, to then send them the right response message. And that response message is always the way that LinkedIn's set up right now. You really do have to focus on trying to connect with that person. LinkedIn used to, and this wasn't long ago, like 3-4 months ago, you could kind of bypass that I don't know this person, they're a second degree contact feature by joining a common group that they belong to and then send them a direct message without ever connecting. And you could do that unlimited to as many people as you wanted, as long as you belong to the same group. But since they changed that, now you can only do 15 of those per month. The focus on LinkedIn has to be about getting connected with that person. So one of the things that we always say is, so for example, say you're somebody I'm targeting on LinkedIn to be aware of what I do because you might want to hire me or something, right? So I look at your profile, you look back at mine. My response would be, hey, Matt, thanks for checking out my profile. So you acknowledge the fact that, like, hey, I know that you looked at mine. Sometimes you might say, I looked at yours first. That's probably why you looked at me. You might even disclose that,
Yeah.
But what we say in the second line, and you're restricted to 300 characters here, so you got to be very tight with your messaging. But we always say in that second sentence, I'm actively using LinkedIn to grow my network in the blank industry or something to that effect, right? Like, just be completely transparent of what you're doing. And then, would you be open to connecting on LinkedIn? So essentially, you're asking for permission to connect. And that's where a lot of people make mistakes, is that they just go connect and send the default message, which is intrusive. It doesn't imply that they should connect with you in any way, shape, or form without them having to dig in and learn about you and why they should connect. So
right. So that 300 character message, that's a message that LinkedIn allows you to send people if they viewed your profile. Is that how that works? Or is that just a standard messaging like area?
If you're trying to connect with them, so you're trying to send a connection request to a second or third degree connection.
Okay, so that's what you actually would put in the connection request.
Exactly.
Got you. Okay.
Yeah. So that's the limitation, is those 300 characters. You're not allowed to put any links in those as well. They They block all that stuff. It's intended for you to say, here's why I want to connect with you. Would you be open to connecting? And that's that permission-based message of would you be open to connecting? We've done, like, we send thousands of connection requests on behalf of our clients every single week. And just by including those words, we've seen our conversion rates of people accepting connection requests go up by like 60%. And it's such a simple thing, but it's just human behavior, human logic, right? Of I don't want you to tell me what I'm supposed to do. I want you to ask me first, and then I'll give you permission.
Right.
It's incredible. But the goal of it, Matt, though, is to get them to be a first-degree connection. Because as soon as they're a first-degree connection, you can do way more with it, right?
Yeah.
You can send direct messages to them. You can start to set up tags and filters within LinkedIn, so then you can start to segment. You write that really great post, and you can actually send that information out to the right people. And there's manual ways, but there's also tools that you can automate some of that process. And that's where it takes some of the guesswork of like, okay, here's another post, crickets. How do I get this in front of the right people? You send it to those people that you want to see.
Gotcha. So the tags and segmenting, is that like a premium feature, or is that something that's just kind of always in there, but most people don't know it even exists? Because I didn't even know that was there.
No, it exists in a free account as well. You can still do the tagging. In fact, you can tag people that aren't first-degree connections even. There's, on every profile, there's a little star, and you just click on that, and it says add to contacts, essentially.
Okay.
And it'll drop down another tab that says relationship. And in the relationship tab, you'll see, like, how did we meet? There's a lot of stuff that's in there, like how did we meet, where you can't really search for it, so it doesn't become super functional as like a CRM. But the tagging is effective, and I've been kind of on board and off board with LinkedIn tagging over the last year, because I keep hearing that LinkedIn might remove it at some point. So to take any effort to try and organize really, really effective tags in LinkedIn for them to go and just take it all away is daunting. So that's why we've actually created our own custom CRM tracking system, which is really simple. It's like it's a Google spreadsheet essentially, but it includes the fields that we need to track conversations, so that we actually track on both. And then if LinkedIn did happen to take away all of our tags, we still have the information that we need on the other side.
Very cool. Yeah, I mean, so when you say tagging, you mean like on Facebook, where you would put like @ and then somebody's name, and it would make sure that they're notified that they were in that post, kind of the same idea?
Okay, so we're talking about two different tagging options here. So
okay.
there's the one aspect of tagging is like a CRM, where you can tag a contact and say, okay, I want to pull up all the people that I've tagged as San Diego.
Okay, so it almost like the way Infusionsoft, you can add tags of. Okay, I see what you're saying. So you can tag a bunch of people with San Diego or whatever, and then when a message goes out, you want all those people to be notified, so you can say notify these people with this tag.
Yeah, exactly. So think about like, and this is actually, I'm glad that this conversation has gone like this, because the most effective use of LinkedIn that we found for our clients, and even in educating our members and stuff too, is always built around events. So if you have a reason to reach out to somebody where it's not invasive, and because even if you're sending somebody a great piece of content where you're like, they would love this, but they're busy and it pissed them off, you've still kind of invaded their space, right?
Right.
But when, like, traffic and conversion is a great example in San Diego, it's a great conference, and I might tag people as internet marketing or online marketing and send a message to every one of those people saying, are you heading to traffic and conversion this year? If so, it'd be great to get together. If not, is there anyone you think that I should meet with while I'm there? Like asking for referrals, even like talk about your podcast approach, right? Like trying to meet the right people and then have those people refer their friends and refer their friends. You can use LinkedIn in that way too, to line up meetings. So, you're walking into traffic and conversion with qualified meetings lined up already, so you're not wasting your time, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that's cool. I never even knew that existed. I had no idea that the tagging feature was there. I mean, my way of tagging on LinkedIn was always, okay, I made this new blog post, I'm going to share it to LinkedIn, and then I'm going to like reply kind of to like 3 or 4 people that I think will enjoy this post, and hopefully they'll like it and share it, and it'll get a little more reach. But I think I'm taking more of like I'm thinking of LinkedIn in the same way I think of Facebook, and I'm trying to take the same exact approach I take on Facebook on LinkedIn, but it doesn't seem to have the same effectiveness as it would on something like Facebook.
Yeah, And you can do that. Obviously, that's why we're mentioning this now. You can do app mentions on LinkedIn. It's a fairly new feature. It's within the last year and a half, maybe. But why it seems to be not as effective as Facebook is something we were talking about before we hopped on here. It's just the notifications. The notification system in LinkedIn just quite frankly sucks. Like it's so busy and all over the place, and their messages, their email notification messages seem to go into spam filters a lot or into the like promotions tab in Gmail.
Yeah.
So it makes it tough for people to even know that you app mentioned them, unless they're actively using LinkedIn and they're looking for that kind of stuff. So it's one of the challenges for sure with LinkedIn, using it as like a content marketing machine.
So did you go through all 3 steps already, or did we just make it to 2?
We made it to 2 there. So
okay.
step number 3 is all about development. So, when we talk about who's viewed your profile and an incoming connection request for that matter. So you're viewing the right people, they're viewing your view back, they're sending you connection requests. That's one way to create like those inbound leads. And those are the best ones by far that we've found. If somebody engages with you first, they've already expressed that first level of interest, which is they checked out your stuff, right? But to be proactive on LinkedIn, though, you can also, create a prospect list of people that you want to reach out to directly. So maybe they'll never look back at your profile because they're not super active in logging into LinkedIn. Or maybe they just don't send connection requests because they just accept the ones that come to them. You can proactively use LinkedIn to send connection requests, and you can automate a lot of this. We've got some software tools that we use, as well as staff. We've created a lot of process documents as it relates to hiring outsourced virtual assistants to do this work for you, because we learned from trial and error that there's certain things that you just shouldn't do in your own business. Yeah. You should figure out how to allow other people to do it, and that's one of them. So reaching out to those people that would be interested in what you have to offer and doing it in a way that's, again, non-intrusive. It's not about sales. It's about building a network. It's about offering value. So that whole development process is where the LinkedIn funnel sits, and we can give that LinkedIn funnel PDF to all the people that are watching this here too, just so that they can take a look at it, because I'm looking at it on a second screen here right now. It's a 7-step process with the goal of getting people to a meeting, which is either on the phone or in person, submitting those proposals, getting customers, creating referrals, and repeat customers from there. So. And like I say, we can get into the details of all that here right now if you want to.
Cool. Yeah, so this will be episode number 20. So if you were to go to multiplyauthority.com/episode 20, that's where you'll be able to find the show notes. And then the 3-step process, we'll make it available at multiplyauthority.com/episode 20. So it'll be there.
Yeah, perfect.
I just had to like get out of my screen real quick and double check which episode this is going to be. So
yeah.
So very cool. So where did you just say you wanted to go next? I was checking on
the LinkedIn funnel.
Okay.
The LinkedIn funnel. You want me to go through the 7 steps?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, cool. So like I say, that 3rd step, so you're talking about a lead generation process that has 3 steps, right? So you got foundation, targeting, and development. And then within development, you've got this LinkedIn funnel, okay? So the LinkedIn funnel has 7 steps to it. Step number 1 is finding targets. So it's all about that advanced search, how to use Boolean search, how to narrow down to that right target prospect. A lot of times people struggle with this, and it's really simple. And LinkedIn's actually so powerful. Like if you think about CRMs in general, like there's been a lot of buzz that LinkedIn and Salesforce are going head to head. And there's no doubt, like, the biggest struggle that people have with CRMs is that they're awesome. They have great capabilities of data analysis, but you got to fill in all the blanks on the information. LinkedIn has a competitive advantage because you and I already fill out the information into the database. It's incredible, And most people haven't really fully understood how to leverage that yet. And that advanced search is step number 1. You need to start to learn how to use it. And we go into detail on this inside of our programs and stuff too, that we'll talk more about that when we go through the webinar and whatnot too. But yeah, so finding those targets, that's step number 1. Step number 2 is, and I'll give you kind of Cole's Notes versions of this too, because again, I have a whole hour webinar where I go through these 7 steps, and I know we don't have that much time, but so building awareness. So building awareness is automating the process of viewing those profiles of your target audience. So say you've got 800 people that fit the model of who you're trying to target. you can run these tools to be able to view those profiles, and you're going to get a certain percentage that will look back at you, anywhere from 10 to 15%. So you view 800 profiles, you're going to get 80 to 120, 150 people that'll look back at you, right? And those people that look back at you have already expressed some interest. So you then need to take advantage of that. So step number 3 is evaluating the engagement. So taking a look and seeing who has viewed your profile, right? And again, that's a very popular feature. It's where you should really spend the majority of your time if you're using LinkedIn actively, proactively. Step 4 is about getting connected. So they've looked at you, take the next action, take the next step to actually send the connection request using that permission-based request or messaging as we discussed a moment ago. Step 5 is monitoring the responses. So this is where LinkedIn gets overwhelming, where you've got all these notifications. Their new inbox and stuff is like a chat room. It's so unruly, and it's changing all the time. You know, it's really tough to keep up with. So we created this separate Gmail account that filters all of your LinkedIn messages and notifications and accepted connection requests and everything into one place, so that you can easily see what's come in and who's responded and what they said. And more advanced people can take that email then and filter it to their primary email and create folders. And there's lots of stuff you can do for the technical people out there like ourselves. But
the very basics of it is, if you set up just a second free sort of Gmail account for just LinkedIn, then it's kind of like you're using your own inbox instead of their kind of crazy inbox.
Exactly. Yeah. And we always use the rule of just firstname.lastname.linkedin@gmail.com. It just makes it easy to keep track of. There's a few other benefits to doing that too, is that in order to get your notifications to come into that inbox, you have to set that email as your primary email on LinkedIn. Mm-hmm. And by doing so, you actually create less risk of your email being scraped potentially. And this, like for me, I don't really worry about this too much, but it is a concern. Like people get worried all the time that their emails are going to get scraped and they start getting spam, right?
Yeah.
So if you do this, you put a separate email out there that's your email. It's customized, but if it ever is compromised, you just shut it down and create a new one, right?
Right.
So it just allows you to keep all your information in a much neater way, so that you can actually respond to things. Because, you know, in an online marketing space, we're all about the volume a lot of times, right? It's quality for sure, but it's also quantity. You want as many leads coming in, running through your funnels, through your filters, all that kind of stuff. But for the on-the-ground local business owner that's a consultant that's selling products or services, they might have a really small client base. So to get somebody to engage with you, you want to make sure that you see those messages and that you're responding to them, because you might have a target audience of only 200 people, right? It might not be 200,000. So, and LinkedIn is where you want to keep qualifying, because that's how much money is spent every year on trying to get qualified lists. I had a meeting yesterday. This is me going to go on a rant right away. But I had a meeting yesterday with a guy who's been a sales guy forever. He's been selling software as a service now for the last 5 years or so. So he's still fairly new to technology and stuff. And I went through this entire process with him. I showed him his target audience on LinkedIn. I said, your buyers are here. Look at they're right there. Mm-hmm. And he said, okay, this looks convincing, but I'm still a little bit hesitant. He goes, here's why. I can buy a list and send them an email, and I think I'm going to get a way better response rate. And I said, really? You think you can spend 10 grand on a random cold email list and spam a bunch of people and get them to respond to you, versus you as a human being connecting directly with your buyer and saying, let's have a conversation. I think I can help you. It's just insane, you know?
That's
There's
crazy.
so much you can do. And when you're talking with a small target audience, why not focus your efforts on your best potential clients instead of trying to hit up 10,000 people, you know?
Mm-hmm. So, absolutely. So I have a real quick tech question that I'm just curious about. When you have those LinkedIn messages going straight to a Gmail, can you reply in Gmail, or does it just notify you so that you jump back to LinkedIn?
Yeah, you'd have to jump back to LinkedIn. Okay. I haven't found anything yet that would integrate the two, where you could push notification back to the other.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know if you were using Gmail to just reply, and then that reply would go back into LinkedIn or anything like that.
Yeah, no, that's a feature. We actually just talked about that today with a developer about, do you think we could do this? Because there's a lot of software solutions out there that will integrate Gmail or Google Apps, for example, with a CRM, like Insightly does it, for example. I think Salesforce does it too, where you basically just send your email through Gmail and click a button and it goes straight into your CRM, right?
Right.
But we haven't seen it and we haven't built it yet.
Nice.
Yeah.
So it could be in the future from your company then.
Absolutely. Yeah. In fact, that conversation we had today was all about how to improve our tracking system, because right now it's in a Google spreadsheet, and it's very simple, but of course it always evolves, right? Like we're looking at creating an interface that's more dashboard, pie chart graph focused, where you can do filtering and look for leads based on how far they're qualified, just using a simple interface, because again, people engage with things that are visual versus a whole bunch of numbers, right?
Right.
So it's all evolving as we speak.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. So all right. So what's the next step?
So the next step, so you've evaluated that response. You see in this Gmail account that somebody's accepted a connection request, for example. Okay. Now you want to take action. So it's all about the call to action is the next step. And we have a two-leveled messaging approach. Level 2 is really all about just trust building. It's about engaging. It's about getting them to have a conversation with you. There's no call to action to it really, aside from, like, say, offering them an article with some free content saying, hey, I think you might be interested in this. Or, hey, you might want to, I know so-and-so and I see you do this. You might want to connect with them. I'd be happy to introduce you. It's like all value add stuff, right? But then the level 3s, and a lot of times people will just jump straight to this, and it especially makes sense, again, if you're going to an event, is, hey, we should meet up. Hey, here's a link to a page where you can get this resource that's free that I think you'd really love, and it's an opt-in page, so you're capturing emails, right? Or, hey, are you going to this event? I'm going to be there too. If not, do you know somebody I should meet? That's the one that we're finding the most success with, is when it's event-driven. And it is call to action, and there is an ask to it, but because it's around something where people are naturally wanting to meet other people, we find that the success rate of it's pretty good. So that's step number 6, is the call to action. So actually taking action on the actions that other people are taking.
And now with that call to action, do you recommend kind of having sort of a canned response that you use all the time, or do you recommend like really tailoring it to like every person that that you send to?
It depends. For busy people that are trying to cast a wide net, it's impossible for you to think that you would custom message every person that accepts a connection request.
Right.
Especially if you're doing it aggressively, because if you're sending connection requests effectively, say you're outsourcing this and have a virtual assistant doing it for you, you can do up to, say, 300 connection requests in a day, right? And this is with somebody manually doing it for you, let alone using software potentially to do it. And you're going to get, say, 25, 50, 70% of them. It varies, depends on the industry and your messaging and stuff, that'll accept it. So imagine writing, 150 responses to people every single day. It's just not realistic. So,
yeah. So do you use automation tools for that, or does somebody get in there and kind of copy and paste a canned message?
Yeah, you know what? There is some automation tools that basically run on these rules. So send this connection request. If it's accepted, send this message for sure. There is tools like that. We actually don't use them or recommend them because they're too far on the outside of kind of like cheating the system, and it's not the right way to go.
And who knows if LinkedIn's API might change and shut them off or whatever.
Yeah. And we find just the error potential as well is just not worth it sometimes. But what we do is we outsource all of our first responses that go out. And again, like what we're talking about here is not hard work. It's just repetitive work. So it's easily transcribed into a training video that's 5 to 6 minutes long, which we've created. We've created all the training to actually hire a virtual assistant and then say, okay, watch this video. Now do that for me every day.
And so this virtual assistant has login access to your LinkedIn account and just logs in and does it?
Yeah. And
now, can you add like other users to your LinkedIn to go do that, or that you just have to give them and trust them with your username and password?
Yeah. So there's a certain level of qualification to ensure that you're getting the right people, but it's like everything with virtual assistants. Like eventually you got to kind of give them access to your stuff, and
exactly.
There's layers of security that you can do. Of course, the Gmail account actually comes in handy there too, because we use LastPass as a password management tool, and we'll set up that custom Gmail account as the primary on LinkedIn, give them access to both via LastPass where they don't see the password, And if there's ever any verification that they need to do that goes to that email, they can log into both. They don't ever bug us about what they can or can't access. And of course, as you know, with LastPass, or maybe the viewers don't, you can turn it off at any point, right? Just change the password.
See, I use 1Password. I wonder if it has a similar feature.
Well, does it have the ability to share passwords with other people?
I don't know. I've never actually looked into that feature before.
Okay.
But I've actually, you're like the third person who's talked about LastPass to me in the last couple of weeks, because for that exact reason, for outsourcing and giving, team members LastPass unique passwords just for them.
Yeah.
So that's cool.
Yeah, so it creates that level of security, right, where you don't have to worry about it as much, for sure. Yeah.
Very cool. So then what, that was step 6?
That was step 6. So step 7 is about re-engagement. And this is where it comes back to where you're currently using LinkedIn right now. So you're starting with step 7 now.
Okay.
Which is all about trust building, right? So you can build trust, and it's great that you're doing it, that you're publishing content, you're creating posts, you're doing status updates, you're app mentioning people. These are all the things you can do to build trust. But you need to get the right targeted audience on LinkedIn to be able to see the right stuff in order to build that trust over time, right? Gotcha. Okay. So that's why those 6 steps before that of making sure that you're growing your network in the right areas is important, because those, and it's kind of small on my screen, so I'm just looking to remind myself, but there's, like I say, publishing articles on LinkedIn, which definitely, there's lots of ups and downs we're seeing on this, and there's lots of theories as to do this and you're going to see massive views, and then you try it and it doesn't work, So I don't think there's a real exact formula yet. I think it's still an experiment in progress as we go. But the one value of publishing on LinkedIn, of course, is that people that are on LinkedIn are business mindset focused, and they're looking for skill development, right? So if you can provide any kind of value add that says, here's something that I figured out how to do. It's the same principles that I don't have to tell you about content marketing, right? Like, create content that people want to read. Create those 7 steps to this, right? Those are the kind of articles that get read the most on LinkedIn. And then share them as status updates, get involved in discussions, even in groups, message people directly with that content. If you have a select group of people that you've tagged already, that you can then send those articles to that are within that select group, just like you would segment an email list, Right. And then engaging comments on other people's contents and status updates. And then lastly, the one that I've got on here is the keep in touch feature. So there's a feature on LinkedIn that it'll notify you every time somebody has a work anniversary, or they've started a new job, or even birthdays. There's even, it's even a little Facebooky that way too. But those ones simply alone too, and with the keep in touch one, I don't recommend to people to use that overly, because LinkedIn gives you default messages that say, hey, congratulations on your work anniversary. And I just had one show up here not long ago for another business that Mike and I started not long ago, a couple of years ago, but I had 90 people say the exact same thing. Congratulations on your work anniversary. It's okay, because number one, I see it and I'm like, oh yeah, that guy. I met him 2 years ago. So it's this it just re-engages you with that person. Yeah. But even better is if you're connected with them already, you can send them a direct message to congratulate them and even elaborate on it, right? So it's such a powerful tool when you're talking about direct engagement with the influencers that you want to connect with, or the decision makers and the buyers, right?
Right. Yeah, one thing I think that would be a great feature for LinkedIn that I don't think exists is just being able to turn on some sort of reminder for each contact, going to a contact and saying, I want to keep in touch with this person at least once every 2 months. And then having some sort of reminder come to you saying, hey, it's been about 2 months since you've kept in touch with this person. Maybe you should give them a shout out. Yeah. I wish there was some sort of feature like that in LinkedIn, because I think that'd be really powerful.
It does exist, actually, Matt.
Oh, does it?
Yeah. It's in the relationship tab. You can set a reminder for yourself. We actually haven't used it a whole bunch, and you know what? I might actually have to dive in there and re-engage in that one, just because it's just another thing where I was like, that's number 8 on my list, and I'm still on number 6.
I obviously wouldn't want to turn that on for every single contact, but there would probably be some key influential contacts that I want to make sure that they remember me and I kind of stay top of mind with them. Yeah. I think that could be really powerful.
Yeah, so the question that I don't know the answer to right now, but we can figure out, is, do you get notified via email? Does it come to your LinkedIn inbox? I don't know that offhand, but I know there is a feature in LinkedIn that says, remind me to follow up with this person.
Now, is there a LinkedIn mobile app?
There is, yeah.
And do you use that at all? I mean, or do you pretty much do most of your stuff on the website?
I do most of the active engagements and the campaign execution using the desktop, just because it's more efficient. But I use the messaging feature within their app to be able to go back and forth with people directly whenever I'm customizing messages myself. It's pretty good, actually. The app has improved a lot over the years, and continues to. You know, there's custom apps that they build that are more standalone, that are for groups in particular. There's ones that are for Pulse, like the publishing platform as well, and they're starting to integrate it all. But it's way more powerful on a desktop than it is through the mobile app, for sure.
Well, because I was just thinking on an app like that sort of, hey, don't forget to keep in touch kind of thing would be good as like a push notification every 2 months to like the phone app. So,
Totally.
You know,
Totally.
so there's so many different avenues I want to go down still.
Let's do it.
So I want to talk about the communities feature, because that's something that I haven't really. I actually built a community called the Business Podcasters Network, which was designed to be a community for podcasters who podcast about business. And I created that community probably 3 years ago now. And I think I went in and I checked in on it like a few weeks ago, just out of curiosity. I think I saw some sort of notification about it. And there's like, I don't know, there's like 200 members in there now. And that was the first time I checked in probably a year. And there's no engagement, no discussion. But I remember with linked influence, I think I went through the course and reviewed some of the stuff, I don't know, maybe 2 years ago, you know, the Lewis's content. And I remember he talked quite a bit about communities. So I want to know a little bit about where the value in communities is and how to really leverage those.
Yeah, well, I'll use Sports Networker and the Sports Industry Network group that we created on LinkedIn as the first example to this. So that group was started in like 2008. And at the time, LinkedIn groups were very engaging. They were, and they had the ability to be open, meaning that anybody could join them at any time. You didn't have to set any filters on it. So they became very engaging places, right? Mm-hmm. And then from a group owner perspective, they were very powerful too, and they still are, because you have the ability to send an announcement every week to the entire group, which essentially shows up like an email in their inbox. So it's like building a separate email list, right? Mm-hmm. So that Sports Industry Network saw, like, you should see the bar graph on this one. They actually took the stats away. They used to be public on every group. You could actually see the stats, but it went like this and then went boom, like straight up around it was right around when I started working with him, actually. So I like to take the credit for it. The truth of it is, though, is that LinkedIn started hitting that critical mass point around 2010, 11, 12. I can't even remember exactly when it was, but you started to see this spike because more people were joining, more people were engaging. It was a great community. We had like Nike and Puma and Adidas advertising jobs inside of our group. It was crazy. Now they've changed groups, and you have to either be invited to a group or you have to request to join a group. Mm-hmm. So they've made it more restrictive, and they've done it with the purpose of reducing spam and just, you know, unnecessary promotional content that ends up in these groups. Mm-hmm. And where at first we looked at it and went, oh, they've just destroyed LinkedIn. It's going to be terrible now. Just the same way that people do with Facebook, right? Like, oh, these changes suck. I hate it. And then, you know, 6 months later, they love it, right?
Yeah, you're just over it.
Yeah. And Sean Malarkey and I talked about this on a webinar recently where, you know, those changes that encourage more transparency and actual, like, real conversations at first create chaos and frustration, but eventually creates way better conversations. And that's what we're starting to see right now. So it's certainly tougher to build a big group now on LinkedIn unless you're using, for example, our system, like the LinkedIn funnel, for example. Like, you think about, that was the third, when we talked about level 2 messaging and calls to action, one of the ones is, you might be interested in joining our group. We have this group of professionals that are all podcasters that share information. Here's a link to it. There's no, like, you're not trying to get them to buy anything. You're just truly adding value, like join my group. And of course, you're getting the benefit of them joining your group, though. But that's where we see some people using our process is they build these groups, because building a group is like building an email list. You can still send those announcements to people, right? And I created, like more recently, I created so our 30-day sales machine program, which is it's this entire process with training videos and the LinkedIn funnel built in and all of our resources, our tracking system, our messaging scripts, the tools, everything's all in there, right? We created a LinkedIn group too as our mastermind group for all of our members to get involved in. And there's features you can set on a group too, where as soon as you accept them to join, they'll automatically get a welcome message that says, hey, welcome to the group. Do these two things first. Go here and introduce yourself. Go here and do this. Make sure you click this to turn on your notifications. And that's something that's not in my video right now. But we talked about that earlier. But so anyways, so you can get them in there and it starts to become the start of a community. Now, I can tell you that I created that because, of course, we have a LinkedIn training program. So it just made sense to create a LinkedIn group for our community, right?
Right.
But I personally am in a lot of Facebook groups where there's communities like yours, for example. And the engagement is so much greater on Facebook still. It's incredible. So
do you think that's just because people still check into Facebook like 6 times a day versus maybe only checking into LinkedIn once a day or so?
I think so, honestly. That's and the way that notifications are sent too. I think the filtering system, for whatever reason, for LinkedIn sends all your LinkedIn notifications into like a promotions tab. Or what's the other one? Social, I think, right? Maybe it's the social tab.
Yeah, social.
But anyway, so it's unless you're looking for them or you have your dedicated email, which is again why I suggest create your own custom email that then all your notifications go into one place. It makes it so much easier to filter through stuff, right? Like now I go into that email and I see, 30-day sales machine mastermind group, and I know, and I can see what the message is, and I know whether or not I need to reply to it, engage in it, because it's part of our support system too. Like people ask questions, we answer them in there, right?
Right.
So they're really it's evolving. In fact, what I'm doing now is we're running a challenge coming up here soon, which is basically just a timed event where people can then get email notifications saying like, hey, poke, did you do this today, right? But the community that we've created for that is a Facebook group, because I'm actually want to experiment between the Facebook group and the LinkedIn group and see how they evolve and which one becomes more effective. So we're using both right now.
Yeah. Are you familiar with Carl White? Do you know?
Yes.
Okay, absolutely. So I remember hearing and this is just totally a little sidebar here, but I remember he used to teach this strategy where he would go and find LinkedIn groups that had massive followings, and then he'd go and ask the creator of the group if they wanted to partner with him like 50-50, and then he would pitch products to that group and then split the profits with the group owner. Is that still like a viable strategy? Do you still know of people doing that kind of thing?
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. We do it. And I don't know how many other people do it out there, but here's the one thing with it though, Matt, is that a lot of people that started groups originally that are really powerful, they fit one of two molds. One is they don't believe in affiliate marketing, so they don't want to do anything that's outside of what they offer. Which is fine, like it is what it is. And then the other half of them, just by default, happen to create a group that went massive, and they have no clue what you're talking about when you try and reach out to them.
I can definitely see that. I've ran into both types. I can see that there's those people that are very protective of their group that are like, no, this is sacred. I'm not going to put other people's affiliate products in there. And then I could, and my group specifically, I think what ended up happening, and the only reason it has 200 members now, was somebody actually emailed me or reached out to me on LinkedIn and said, hey, you have this group. I think it's a good idea. Would you mind making me a moderator on the group? So I made them a moderator so that they could approve new people coming into the group. And that's the only reason that thing grew. So I'm one of those people that's like, I have no idea how to manage this stuff.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, it's about finding the sweet spot of the people that understand this space, that see the value of offering value in the form of free content, like a webinar or something in exchange. And then having the pitch at the end, where you're getting people to join and seeing the financial benefit of the 50% affiliate commission. But yeah, so for me, for example, I put together a list, just a simple spreadsheet of people that I can work with to do promotions for our program to help spread the word and get new members in and all that kind of stuff. And LinkedIn group owners are on that list, although they're secondary to everybody else that already understands this space.
Right. So those types of groups are out there. they're just quite a bit harder to find than than you might initially think.
Yeah, they are for sure. But like one of the steps of our process that we go through is all about group finding and documenting and joining, because you can now join up to 100 groups. It used to be 50. And it's actually another mistake that a lot of people make too. When they're on LinkedIn, they'll join the groups of their peers. So like other online, in our case, like other online marketers, other LinkedIn, experts, quote unquote, other podcasting people, all that kind of stuff. But your target audience is the small business owner, the entrepreneur, the solopreneur, the person that needs the help. Like, in all honesty, Matt, in the last like month and a half, we've been pretty aggressive in promoting 30-day Sales Machine. And our new members, the average age is easily between 55 and 65, I would say. And they're independent entrepreneurs, most of them. Some of them are working for companies and they're in sales positions, all that kind of stuff. But most of them own their own businesses. And they're not in the same groups that we're in. They're not. They're still very much traditional, but they're starting to dive down this space because they're like, I need to learn this.
Yeah, that makes so much sense. And this, this is sort of relevant on Facebook. When I do Facebook ad targeting, I used to make the mistake of targeting people that, I teach courses on blogging and content marketing, so I would go and target people who were fans of Pat Flynn, target people who were fans of ProBlogger and Darren Rouse and all these bloggers. But that's, those are the people that are on the same level as me. They're not the people that want to learn about this stuff. So it's kind of the same idea with joining groups and approaching people through that way.
Yeah.
Now, do you see any value in sharing, content with the groups? Like if I was to create a new blog post or a new podcast or something like that, there's always that option to post, the status updates and the links directly into groups as well. But I know that there's like a promotions tab kind of thing in LinkedIn as well, kind of like Gmail does. How does that whole thing work for content creators, and what would you recommend there?
It used to be way more powerful than it is, and it's a thing that LinkedIn needs to fix if they want people to start using groups in that way again. But it used to be really powerful to submit your content into groups for one particular reason. There was always, by default in your settings when you join a group, it would say, notify me weekly of any top discussions that are happening in that group, or top promoters or top submitters of content, right? So what would happen is you'd get an email to your inbox that says, in the sports industry network this week, these 3 people submitted the most content. Your picture would be on there, your name would be on there, and then a topic that you had submitted would be on there. So it's like another distribution channel of getting into the person's inbox. And like, no matter how much we can scream about Twitter and Facebook and Instagram and LinkedIn and everything else, email is still the most effective way to market and sell and promote your business. Period. So anytime you can get an email into somebody's inbox that's coming from a place like LinkedIn, where if you think about the people that were just starting to engage in LinkedIn, the open rates, and I don't know what the exact stats are on this, so I don't want to put my foot in my mouth, but the open rates on messages from LinkedIn versus regular email have been higher historically in the last few years. Now that might be changing a little bit here now, but it used to be that it was really really easy to get your content into their inbox through the groups. Now it doesn't work like that. And the new filtering systems of the promotions tab, discussions tab, they don't exist like that anymore. They don't actually have the promotions and discussions tab separately. It's everything's just filtered based on LinkedIn's own algorithm of how they want to filter this content. So it's really frustrating from a content marketer standpoint. Most the LinkedIn experts of the world that are in their own groups talking about everything technical LinkedIn are pissed right off about how groups are going right now. But that's why I say, don't focus so much effort on the content side of things and putting content in groups and stuff. It's really about getting into the groups where your target audience is. So requesting to join those groups and coming at it from a perspective of, here's the value I could offer to this group, not let me in so I could spam your members. But then using those groups as a means to filter your target audience, because they're already qualifying themselves. If your target audience is the small business owners of San Diego, they've already joined the group, Small Business Owners of San Diego. And that's just a random example. I don't know if that group actually exists. But so when you're using LinkedIn's advanced search to try and find your target audience, use the groups first because they've already categorized themselves.
Right. Right.
And if you join those groups, you can message those people directly. There's a limited amount, but it just creates so much more opportunity. It makes it way easier to use LinkedIn effectively.
Very cool.
Yeah.
So can you use the groups as, you know, you were talking about tagging and segmenting earlier. Can you tag people that are in groups when you're, you know, sharing content on your wall? Do you know what I mean? Like, can you use those communities as a way to like easily tag people and filter people when you are distributing content into LinkedIn?
If not when you're sharing it publicly per se, but if you wanted to, for example, send a direct message to all your first degree contacts that belong to the San Diego Small Business Owners group.
Oh, you can do that. Okay.
You could do that because you could filter your search within your first degree contacts based on a group. Mm-hmm. And then you can use tools to automate the process of sending all that stuff.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
So just a few sort of last questions then. Now, when it comes to all the invites, do you have the philosophy of being very selective with who you approve to be friends with, or do you just accept everybody? Because I remember back in the, you know, a couple of years ago when I was kind of looking into LinkedIn and studying it, the philosophy was just accept everybody, just approve everybody who tries to you know, connect with you. Is that still the philosophy? Do you still connect with pretty much everybody that wants to connect, or do you filter them a little bit?
I have two answers for this. One is, three comments to make on that. One is there's certainly people that are trying to game the system that have blatant, like, fake accounts. Don't accept those. There's no benefit to it. They're just they're just going to try and spam me and send me messages, right? It's tough to find them. You can kind of tell once you've kind of been in the online space, you can tell a fake photo, you know?
Yeah.
You can tell a profile that has nothing on it except for the same kind of messaging over and over again about how I can help you generate leads, and it's got some really super attractive girl on it and stuff like that. They're probably spammers. Don't accept those. For people that are in the space where volume and quality is important when it comes to leads, like for me and you, for example, if we sell training programs on content marketing or LinkedIn and lead generation, all that kind of stuff, our target audience is, you know, you hate to say this because it's always like rule number one, don't say everybody's in my target audience, but the truth is why would you discriminate against somebody that wants to connect with you that might buy something from you? You know? So in those cases, I do still take the philosophy that says that connect with whoever wants to connect with you. But then follow up with them and just, you know, let them know what you do, how you do it, why they should trust you, and where they can find out more info. You can build an email list like that too. For the average user that's very like particular about who they work with, maybe they're a realtor, for example, in a local market, right? Why would they benefit from connecting with other realtors in different markets? Well, the obvious one with that is the referral business, right? So to build relationships with people in different cities, Minneapolis versus Phoenix, like there's that obvious right there. You can create those relationships. I have a friend who's also a client who's down in Mexico. We were talking about Mexico before the call here. And he uses LinkedIn for referrals all the time because a lot of his clientele come down from Canada, so from Vancouver, Calgary, Edmonton, Saskatoon, that type of thing. And so he connects with what would be deemed as his competitors, other realtors, because he sees the opportunity to share with them information and vice versa, right? So, you know, I think it's really just a mindset shift because I'll use this guy as an example that I met with yesterday again. He said, I don't meet with anybody unless I've shaken their hand and met them in person. And, you know, I asked them the question like, okay, so if somebody is your potential client or somebody that you've worked with in the past that might know your next potential client that could introduce you, would you not connect with them? Well, that's different, you know, like, so like it's a mindset thing of like, there's so much value in building a network on LinkedIn because you start to expand your second degree network. It allows you to see more things in your searches. It allows you to do more things when you're running campaigns. So there's a ton of benefit of being more of an open networker. I like to suggest to people that are kind of tiptoeing into that space to do a hybrid, you know, don't necessarily accept the person that's in a different market in a completely different industry because maybe they won't benefit you that much, but stop thinking about it in the way that how can they help me and think more, how could you help them? And you know, you'll see more benefit from having a bigger network. It's such a tough question to answer because there's pros and cons to both. You know?
Yeah, and I guess that it is sort of a case by case scenario. There's no one answer that fits every person's scenario, I guess. So that makes sense. Yeah. Now, when somebody does send you a request and you accept them, do you immediately kind of send the sort of canned response call to action message to those people as well?
Most of the time, usually I'll have a predefined ideal target prospect that I'll focus my efforts on for those follow-ups. The other people, I don't. I'll just put them in my network, and at some point I might, message out to them some type of value add, whatever it might be. Well,
I'm just wondering how much as well. Like, how much do you sort of, if somebody asked to be accepted into your network, how much do you go and look into them and try to tag them so you can segment them later and that sort of thing, or do you just kind of accept them and then they just start seeing what you post? Like,
yeah, the more the higher the volume becomes, the more daunting of a task it becomes to try and tag everybody. But at the same time, the more you start working with some outsourced staff and the more they start to understand your business too, they can do a lot of that work for you. So I've really just, since we built this LinkedIn funnel and this entire process over the last, because this has only been like the last 6 months to a year that we've really had this really intricate system built, But like, for example, one of my target audiences is athletic directors and commissioners with NCAA programs. And there's hundreds and hundreds of schools in the United States that have thousands of student athletes and coaches that would definitely benefit from me coming in and speaking to them about the pros and cons of social media and personal brand building and how to use LinkedIn to get their dream job when they're done school and all those different things. So whenever an athletic director or anybody that represents some type of decision maker looks at my profile, I have staff that go, if this person says athletic director in their profile, send them this custom script because I definitely know I want to connect with them and I want to filter them because I'm going to want to reach out to them again in the spring here for speaking opportunities in the fall.
Right.
So it's a matter of just focusing your efforts where they're best spent. Don't overwhelm yourself with trying to do everything.
Cool. So now I just have kind of a few last minute sort of wrap up questions. Do you have any book recommendations, maybe book recommendations specifically about LinkedIn, but then also maybe a book recommendation that's like a favorite business book or something?
Yeah. I don't really have any specific LinkedIn book recommendations. I got to write one, don't I?
Yeah, I think you do.
Yeah, definitely.
I'll send you the transcripts from this. That'll be a good start.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, it's so true, right? Like how easy it is to put together chaptered systems and everything. Just start talking, right? And transcribe. But I'll go with the other side of it, which is, other books that I've read or I'm reading right now. One that I'm reading right now is Talk Like Ted by Carmine Gallo. Have you ever read that before?
I have that one. I haven't read it yet, though.
It's so awesome. Like it's, and it's, I've followed him online too. I'm on his email list as well. He's an older guy that's been around forever. That's done a lot of public speaking, and really the book is just about evaluating speaking styles and what works and what doesn't, and what kind of reverse analyzing the best TED Talks and how they've been most effective and why they get the most views. But it really just gets you thinking about human psychology and human behavior and how it's not just for the person that's standing on stage speaking for 1,000 people or even doing webinars or podcasts. It's for the everyday person in learning how to communicate with people effectively and to touch on, I forget the way that he says it, but it's like speak to their heart and not to their head,
Yeah.
So to get people to influence people, essentially, right?
I read The Presentation Secrets of Steve Jobs, which I think is the same author.
Yeah,
but I definitely need to read Talk Like Ted because I've got that one. Actually, I think I have it on Audible and haven't listened to it yet, so I need to listen to that one.
It's a good one too. It would be a great one to listen on podcast because it's a lot of storytelling. It's so let's use this guy as an example. Here's how he did his presentation. It was totally against all the rules that I just told you, but this is what worked for him. So you can kind of almost put yourself in the crowd and visualize what went down during that talk, which is pretty neat.
Definitely.
So that's probably the best one I would recommend right now as far as for reading material. And the other thing too, Matt, like, and I knew you were going to ask the question about the books. I have a guy that's working with me right now. John Tokar is his name, and I'll tell him to watch this so that he knows.
I know John.
Oh yeah. Did you guys do the leadership program together?
Uh-huh. Yeah, yeah.
Oh, there you go. Yeah. So John's working with me on the sports side of the business, right? Because he has a passion for working with athletes, and he's started a company called Athletes Against Bullying, where he brings professional athletes along. And you know, I've told John, I keep feeding him stuff, right? I'm sure I'm overwhelming him by now, right? But read this, watch this, do this, you know, because he's just a sponge right now of wanting to learn information. But anyways, one of the things that I've told him to read again was the 4-Hour Work Week and the E-Myth and, you know, Good to Great. And some of these books that I started with, because I feel like it sets the foundation for a lot of people. And we take for granted that, you know, we read those books 10 years ago, you know. And some of that stuff that's in those books is somewhat outdated, but the theories of why you would want to do certain things and just thinking about entrepreneurship in a different way, they're such great books to start with. And, you know, we always get caught up in what's the next new thing, but I always try and tell people, go read this one first, because this will change your life. This will change the way that you look at business.
I think my 3 sort of essentials that I tell everybody that they need to read who's thinking about getting into a business, the 4-Hour Work Week, the E-Myth, and Rich Dad Poor Dad. Those 3 are the 3 that I tell everybody that they need to go read. And Rich Dad Poor Dad isn't 100% about starting a business, but it's about, you know, how to look at assets and liabilities and stuff like that. And I think it's a good one as well. But I agree with the 4-Hour Work Week and the E-Myth being 2 of the best sort of starter books for anybody getting into business.
And another one too, and I'll give a shout out to my wife on this one, Sharmella. She's the one that introduced me to Seth Godin and permission marketing. And I read that book on the beach in Mexico in 2010, and it shifted the way that I started to see marketing too, from an inbound perspective. So that's a big one as well that will help you see things differently. Because I find, and again, you know, when I go back to the typical average person that's involved in my program now, that's in their 50s probably, they're very much used to the old school way of promotions, which is still very invasive and billboardy and you know, radio show and infomercial and all that kind of stuff. And they don't think of things in the opposite way, which is the pull strategy, right? It's always about push. So yeah, those are the ones I'd start with. Cool.
Yeah, those are definitely some good ones. So we're doing a live webinar where we're actually going to really dig into a lot of this stuff. Yeah. And we're going to do it on February 18th, 2016, but you may be listening to this after that. So we will have a replay of the webinar for anybody who's not able to make it live. But on February 18th, we're going to do this live webinar. And, you know, what kind of stuff are we going to go into on that training?
Yeah, well, we'll go, like, obviously we're just talking right now about a lot of this stuff, but what I'll do is I actually go through a case study of a client that we worked with, one of many that we've done this for, but we go through the entire LinkedIn funnel process, so that 7-step process, and I break it down and I show people, you know, you'd go here, you'd click here, you'd do this. This is the script that you'd use in this first message. Here's how it converts. What happens in this scenario? Somebody looks at you, how do you actually walk through those steps to see the results that we're talking about, right? So I built the deck because I got people asking me about this and saying like, so, okay, tell me again, how does this work? Where do you go? What do you click? Like it's overwhelming. You need to see visuals, right? So the LinkedIn funnel PDF, which I'll give to you so you can give to everybody to look at, there's a lot of information on there too that'll make people go, oh yeah, aha, I see how this could work. But then watching me go through a case study of showing you how it actually worked for a particular person, I think people have a lot of light bulbs go off.
Cool. Now, do we have a link yet where people can go to register for that webinar?
Not yet.
Okay. I was just wondering if we want to do something where it's like, you know, LinkedInfluence / Matt or something, and then just create it after the webinar.
You know what we can do? Let's create something right now, because like you say, it's just a matter of creating it, right? We'll do LinkedIn to leads. So linked, INTO, leads.com / Matt webinar. How's that?
Cool. All one word, Matt webinar. Right?
Yeah.
All right, cool. So go to linkedintoleads.com / Matt webinar to register for the webinar. If you're hearing this before February 18th, after February 18th, go there to get details on how you can watch that webinar in the future.
Yeah, Perfect.
Awesome. So where can people go to learn more about you and find out more? And what's your call to action from here?
Sure. Well, I've spent a lot of time in the last few months building out different properties and stuff. And the main one that's always comes back to is your own personal brand, right? So trevorturnbull.com. We can link it up somewhere in the show notes or wherever too. But that's probably the best place to go and find out about all the different products and stuff that we've created, as well as my background and information about the sports side of things too. I've got info there. I also own another website here that's local called Networking in Vancouver, which is we're looking at building out into more of a going to different regions to create networking platform where people can submit events and create content to be able to help people with networking as well. Because that's kind of my thing, right? Like I'm definitely kind of sunk my teeth into online brand reputation, personal branding, networking online and offline, with the benefits of you advancing and growing your career. So
Yeah.
the hub is trevorturnbull.com, and Matt Wolfe's training on all of the things I can do to create content is on my immediate to-do list.
Very cool.
Yeah.
Well, awesome. This was super insightful. I think there's a lot of good actionable takeaways here. So I appreciate you taking the time and hanging out and sharing all that with us today.
Yeah, absolutely. It's always fun to chat about the things that I do 8 to 16 hours a day, right?
Awesome. All right, man. I will let you go. Thanks for joining us.
Cool. Appreciate it.